Hello and welcome to today's episode where we are joined by a dynamic entrepreneur who's redefining the rental experience in India, Shail Daswani, co founder of Flent. After college, Shail combined his love for selling, storytelling, writing, and discovering unique homes into what initially started as running Airbnb for some passive income. Fast forward to today, Shail is at the helm of Flent, India's first full stack rental brand. Hi, Shail, it's lovely meeting you.
Hey Alavia, thank you so much for having me over.
So, Shell, before we get into everything, tell us about your journey, tell us about your background, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, unlike a lot of people in the PropTech space, I don't have any background in real estate. Uh, Fortunately, or coincidentally, I must say my dad has been into real estate. I mean, he's a broker back in my hometown. But he sent me to Kota to prepare for IIT, and I then completed my engineering from IIT Kharagpur in 2020. In the last 4 odd years, I've been very closely involved in the startup ecosystem, but on the other side of things, I've worked in a lot of SaaS companies before. I worked as a product manager, I've worked as a growth manager. So never imagined myself actually kind of getting into prop tech and building a company like Flent. But I think what really kind of made me quit everything else and build the venture was my inherent passion for setting up homes, my inherent passion for selling things in general. And it all kind of started 4 years ago when I came to Bangalore for the first time. I really wanted a good place to live in, and I was not able to, find that kind of vibe in any co-lives or PGs. So I decided to rent a 3 BHK, and I told the landlord that, I'll take this entire apartment from you. I'll stay in one of the rooms. Let me put the remaining 2 rooms on Airbnb. You will get the rent no matter what. And he was like, sure. I mean, as long as I'm getting the rent. And I took a loan from one of these random fintech apps, and kind of decked up the place from that money. And I think that was my first taste of making money by putting rooms on Airbnb. And I kept doing it in some or the other manner over in the last 3 or 4 years. And sometime last year, when we were just playing around with a few ideas, we were figuring out what to do next. Me and my co-founders, we just said ki chalo, this is something that we are super passionate about. We love setting up homes, and we can clearly see how people used to book our Airbnbs and used to stay in our Airbnbs for 5 months, 8 months, 11 months. So there was some value that we were actually adding. So we said, okay, let's just start and we'll see where it goes from there. So yeah, I think that's a little bit about me. I'm sorry, I also kind of went into the journey with Flint. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, so nonetheless, let me ask you this question also. Why Flint? How did you come up with this particular name? And also tell us why you felt like it was a good time to start right now.
Got it.
And you have gotten into the inspiration, but do build on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think I've already spoken about how it all started with me kind of running Airbnbs for some landlords in Bangalore. But I think, from a company building perspective, we believe that renting in India is going through a very interesting phase. On one side, you have this affluent working professional that's making a lot more money than, as compared to the last 10 or 5 odd years. People are spending more and more on convenience. So I mean, you order a lot of things from quick commerce, D2C brands have popped up. So I think on the demand side, what's happening is that as like an affluent working professional, I've gotten used to a standard of everything. So I mean, maybe 20 years ago, everyone used to have a Parle G biscuit, right? But now you'd have like hundreds of brands, and everyone has their own standard of biscuit that they have, right? Our core insight was that, for this top 1% working professional who's like living in the top cities of India, like Mumbai, Delhi, Gurgaon, Bangalore, they don't really have a standard of renting to look for. I mean, it's, they definitely have a standard in their mind, but there's no company out there that's actually facilitating that kind of a standard right on the plate. And on the supply side, what's again, renting is kind of going through a very interesting phase, both on the supply and demand side. On the supply side, I think if you just look at the kind of real estate transactions that have been happening in the top 5 metro cities of India, you'd see that a lot of properties are now being bought purely from an investment perspective. Of course, it used to happen before as well, but now you have this new class of young affluent landlords who understand the internet, who understand tech, who have kind of put in some portion of their overall net worth into real estate. They're probably living in India, they're probably living outside India. These people are buying more and more apartments and real estate. And it's very different from how a traditional landlord would manage their home. These landlords are also looking for a lot of convenience, a lot of flexibility, so that they can just stay in the United States and they can have someone back in India who's taking care of their property, who's giving them a fixed rental yield, so that they don't have to keep haggling with their tenants, or they don't have to keep negotiating with brokers on the fees and stuff. So we also saw that emergence of the new kind of landlord. And we believe that in a market like Flint, where we decided to kind of build a new standard of renting, we really wanted to kind of create that matchmaking platform where you have a landlord, where you have a tenant. And a lot of times a tenant is not exactly looking for the kind of house you have as a landlord, and the landlord is not looking for exactly the kind of tenant you are. So that kind of like a jigsaw puzzle in some ways, where this is the landlord, this is the tenant, and we're like an experience layer in the middle that is adding value to the landlord's life and adding a lot more value, of course, on the tenant side. So that was, I mean, our understanding of the market and the way real estate is kind of shaping up. We believe we can easily create like $100 million revenue company just by serving these top 20, 30, 50,000 working professionals sitting in the top 5 metro cities of India.
That's
Just to
actually
Sorry, just to kind of add on the name, by the way. So Flent, we were very sure that we want Flent to be like a new thing in the market. Just like, for I mean, for the lack of a better example, Dunzo, right? I mean, Dunzo kar le, Zepto kar lo, Swiggy kar lo, right? I mean, Uber kar lo, Ola kar lo. So we knew that, all category defining consumer products have been created by, launching their own, verbs in some ways. So we
yeah.
want Flent to be a verb, that Flint kar le. And of course, that was the line of thought. We didn't have the name yet, so we were kind of thinking of a lot of options here and there. Fortunately, Flint was suggested by my co-founder Mayank, and Flint is short for flexible rent. You can also call it flat
Okay.
rent. You can also, like, people have started interpreting it in like a lot of different ways, which is something that is very, very good for us. And even if you look at our logo is essentially like an inverted R in some ways. So the idea behind the logo is that if you flip R, you basically get an FL. So if you flip renting, you get flinting. So kind of all of those things came together when we were designing our logo.
It's really nice actually. So when I read it, I knew that TK, yes, the end is for rent, but I didn't know what the fleur was for. So I
Yeah,
actually wanted to, I thought floor rent, but that doesn't make any sense, but yes, this makes sense, and it's actually nice because I think if you're not going for like Dunzo it, so Flint it goes, it hits, and yeah, okay, good, good. At least you have the term going, and
yeah,
once you all hit it off, I'm sure like people will just be like, oh, why don't you just Flint it?
correct.
Not a bad idea, very smart.
So,
Okay,
I
so
mean, we've always had this hero message for the company. I mean, if you go to our LinkedIn page, Instagram page, or even on our website, we always talk about this thing of, why rent when you can flint? Because we actually believe that flinting is 10x better than renting. And sorry, I didn't get the chance to go into the details of what flinting is. Maybe I'll just take a minute to talk about it.
please do,
So
please do.
we kind of imagine flinting to be a whole new way to rent, where you kind of move into a very tastefully furnished home, which is of course fully furnished to the bare minimum, but accessorization, everything from a good carpet to very good decor to good wall art to good textures, all of that is there. I mean, the home is as good as those homes that you see in a lifestyle magazine or something, right? The kitchen is fully stocked, so everything from an egg whisk to a spoon to a cutlery to kadhais, everything is there, so you don't have to spend any money getting your kitchen stocked up. Of course, appliances are there. So the idea is for you to just move into the home with just your clothes and not bring anything else. On top of it, the house is coming without any brokerage, so we don't charge a brokerage, which I think is a big problem in the market. We curate the homes based on where your office is. So let's say you come and tell me that, okay, my office is at in Belandur and I want a home which is less than 5 kilometers from my pin location. So I get you. We kind of give that curation as well in some ways, where we understand your taste and only launch the most like the top houses in some ways. You don't have to deal with the landlord at all throughout your journey. So I mean, you're always dealing with Flent as like a landlord delta product in some ways. We take care of all requests for you. So if there's any plumbing issue, electricity issue, all of that is on Flent. So we have like a dedicated customer service that takes care of all of these queries. The deposit is super low, and we sell a lot of flexible plans as well. So you can opt for a 3 month lock in, you can opt for a 6 month lock in, or you can opt for an 11 month lock in as well. And whenever you want to leave after your lock in ends, you just give a 1 month notice, and you can move out. It's as simple as that. And then once you move out, I mean, if you again compare it to like a traditional renting experience, landlords typically deduct 1 month of rent as a move out charge. They will charge you very unreasonably when you move out, because for them it's like a one-sided equation. They're like, okay, you're not gonna be renting from me ever again, so I can just deduct whatever I want. So we have that transparency built in from day one, where once you're moving out, we only charge you a 2,000 rupee amount when you move out. So we take care of everything. Of course, if something's damaged, we charge you on top of that. But kind of trying to build that transparency and trust throughout the journey is what we're trying to do.
That's actually, I think y'all are going in the right path, because I think where this renting industry was concerned, trust would become a big matter of discussion, because what was said in the beginning, there are lots of people who would come up with complaints that, oh, my deposit is gone, and had to waste so much time getting my deposit back. So yeah, I mean, when you take away all of these factors, it really helps people with so much time, and not just time but just mental space as well, right? Because not everybody has the bandwidth today to go through all of these ordeals as such. So, but could you go into more of the challenges that y'all saw people dealing with in the rental market, and how y'all address these pain points? Can you just talk about that in more detail?
Sure. See, I mean, as I said, right? I mean, the like if you look at what we are building, it's basically a bunch of products in a single product. So if you look at how traditional renting works, a person who's looking for a home usually goes to a broker or a listing website or a listing marketplace to look for homes. So the first problem to solve is discovery, where I am looking for a good home for myself, which really meets my requirements. Even the first problem in the industry is not yet solved, if you think of it. I mean, the broker really cares a lot more about their commission than your experience, because for him, he doesn't care if you live in that place for 2 months, 5 months, 8 months. So brokers are not transparent at all. They will not tell you about the cons and the flaws of the place. They'll just try to kind of get the deal done, because that's how they kind of make their brokerage. They will always optimize for the kind of deals where they feel they can get brokerage from both sides. So they might have good inventory with them, but they will never show you that inventory, because they like the incentives are not aligned as such, right? So the discovery element is broken. Even if you go to a no broker or like some any other listing platform, you'd have to go through at least 100 200 homes to actually figure out that two or three homes that you really like. Of course, I'm talking about, so here everything that I'm speaking about is from the perspective of my target audience, people who value convenience, who want to live in a great home. And I think more and more such people are present in urban cities these days. So listing platforms don't cut it out, because the quality of homes there is not that great, and at the end of the day are marketplaces, right? So they can't control the quality of inventory that's coming onto their platform, right? So discovery is the first problem that we solve for the end consumer, where every house that we acquire as a company is like a very good home. It doesn't have any cons as such. Most of our homes are located in premier gated communities, very close to tech parks, very close to metro stations. The kind of localities and neighborhoods that anyone would want to live in, because they're like the most sought after ones, right? So of course, I mean, as a company, since we acquire homes ourselves and we furnish homes ourselves, we kind of own that entire experience. It's like, for us, it's going to be super difficult to do like 1,000 homes in a day, right? I mean, we'll always have to ensure that we only pick 2 out of 10 homes that we are seeing on a daily basis, because we optimize for quality and curation there. So that's the first problem we solve for the end consumer, that okay, every home that I get from Flint is a great home. It doesn't matter whether it's furnished, it doesn't matter whether I have to pay a deposit or I have to pay like a huge deposit, the home is great, right? So that's the first problem we solved for our target audience. The second is the furnishing problem. So today, if you look at how the rental market works, people usually rent a home and then they go and get furniture either by buying it. So you kind of go to a furniture vendor and you buy the entire furniture, or you kind of rent it out from these online companies. Uh, the kind of quality we are delivering on the furniture there is like at least 5 to 10x better as compared to what a typical furniture rental company would give you. So again, solving that problem of convenience, solving that problem of flexibility, and solving that problem of bundling here, because we believe that if you're renting a home, everything should be a part of one package, right? I mean, you should not have to go and rent a home separately, furnish it separately, get the agreement done separately. That there should be one company that's like owning that outcome for you. So furnishing is the second problem that we solve. And the third problem we solve is on the commercials in some ways. So if you look at Bangalore as a market, you have these weird rules where a deposit that you typically charge is around 10 months of rent. You charge 1 month of rent as a move out charge. So we are kind of standardizing that for the market, where anyone who's renting a home will not pay more than X months of rent as a deposit, will not pay more than Y amount as a move out charge. And we kind of we're pulling all the strings from our side to make sure that we're able to negotiate deals with landlords where the deposit is always standardized. So I mean, if you think about it, this in itself is a big product. I mean, if
Yeah.
there's a company in India that is just doing this job of standardizing deposits and move out charges for everyone, that company in itself could be like a 20-50 million dollar company. So that's the third problem. uh, and the fourth problem is the service and experience problem in some ways, where when you move into that home, we ensure that the home is cleaned, every part is deep cleaned. We do regular deep cleans throughout the year. If there is any plumbing, electricity issue, we kind of bear it at our own expense, so that you don't have to worry about booking an urban company or something. Again, kind of bundling that entire urban company service into Flint as a product. So I
Okay.
think these are
Yeah.
four different aspects of the problem we are solving for the end consumer. uh, on top of that, there are smaller things. So let's say, if you rent a room in a Flint property, you don't have to worry about finding flatmates, which in itself is a big pain, by the way. I mean, there are like 5 lakh people present in flat and flatmates group in almost every metro city. I mean, the job of
Yeah.
that group is to find a
Yeah.
flatmate, right? So if
Yeah.
you move into a room in a Flint property, you don't have to worry about whether the other room is vacant or not. I mean, we'll find the tenant for that room, and we'll kind of run that show here there. So I think that's also been an additional benefit why a lot of youngsters have started renting with us.
Okay, so that's actually pretty amazing. So y'all are solving for discovery, y'all are solving for convenience. Also, the flatmate issue is something that you'll solve for. What would you say was some a challenge that y'all sort of solved without realizing it, and that came up as like, wow, okay, we didn't notice.
So I think the first problem is something that I was really not like I was not aware of, the fact that people are willing to pay for the discovery problem as well. Honestly, I thought people are paying us because we're adding some very premium furniture. People are paying us because we are taking care of that entire service angle, and people are paying us because we're not bothering them to get flatmates and stuff. But I mean, we've done like some apartments where you know. We've like let's say I've scored a beautiful apartment in a beautiful locality in a beautiful society,
Yeah.
uh, and so many people want to rent a home in that society and in that neighborhood, that they're just like, okay, don't furnish the property for me, I will rent it from you as is, but I'm going to pay you a premium for it because you've curated this property for me, right? So I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
discovery has been one of those more coincidental things, at least in my mind. And the second aspect is that we didn't realize that people really don't want to deal with landlords anymore. So they're like, I am okay paying you a premium because you take care of that entire communication angle for me, and I don't have to deal with the landlord, and I will always deal with you as the company who rented that home for me. So that also kind of came across as a surprise for me in the journey, that people are you looking at it as a value prop.
I was actually discussing your platform with a friend and colleague who actually is the same individual. He's a friend and a colleague. So we were discussing, actually, we weren't discussing Flint. We were discussing how, at least in Mumbai, uh, anybody becomes a broker.
Yeah,
If yeah, if like somebody's looking for a flat, and often, because young individuals who want to live independently is on the rise. If people just want to go and live independently and have that little bit of an experience. And anybody, if you approach them, if building watchman, supervisor, plumber, uh, random, human being who you just ask, do you know anyone, and they all become a broker, and then they look for that little bit of a cut. And that's when I mentioned to him, there's this one company that I'm going to talk to, and they actually are removing the full broker process in the middle. And it was very interesting that we discovered that. I don't know if you face that same issue in Bangalore, where anybody's going to get up and be like, okay, today I'm a broker, I'm going to make that little bit of money on the side. But you're actually solving for an issue uh, that we realized is actually an issue, that there is no standardization in brokers also. So how can there be any standardization in process, any trust in the process, because there is no protocol. Anybody can tomorrow get up and be a certain thing. So there, in the United States, to be a broker you need a license.
yep, yep, yep.
Here you really don't. You just get up and, okay, I'm a broker, that's what I do for a living. So that's
Yeah.
actually, maybe in the future you're going to standardize that also. You're going to bring the brokers to task, and they may have to provide certain promises that they probably have to keep as per protocol for people. So that's actually something that you may land up doing.
See, I think that's a very good point, and I've been thinking a lot about it lately because, see, I'm not going to get into regulations and why India does not mandate licenses for brokers, but you know, the residential brokerage market in India is around 800 crores, which is almost like $100 million market, and very honestly, it's super difficult to end brokerage in India. I mean, see, no broker. I mean, the name is no broker, and they've been around for the last 10 years, but I don't think they've been able to eliminate brokers out of the equation. Of course, they've done a lot of good work when it comes to, maybe getting 20, 30, 40% connects via the landlord, which is very, very good. But eliminating brokerage is super difficult. And I'll tell you, I mean, our experience, because see, supply is one of the most important growth levers for us. I mean, if we're able to crack supply at scale, we will be
Yeah,
able to
absolutely.
further bring down the rents that we are charging to our tenants, because our cost of acquisition is going down, and like the amount of money we're spending
Yeah,
on marketing to acquire landlords is also going down. We realize that brokers at the end of the day operate on information asymmetry. That the reason
yeah,
why a plumber today can become a broker is because he knows something that you don't, and the reason
yeah,
why he knows something that you don't is because he just happened to stumble upon something in the building while he was delivering milk, while he was getting a tap fixed, that he got to know that, okay, this apartment is now available, right? So
absolutely. Yeah,
I believe instead of fighting brokers, we really want to kind of create incentives and mechanisms to work with brokers. Of course, in a way where we're not paying them 1 month of brokerage to work with us. But for brokers, I mean, see, the way it works for brokers is that brokers never have a competitive advantage. They only operate on information asymmetry. So, three people, they got to know that, okay, this apartment is now available. And if I am able to find a customer for it, I will be able to make some brokerage here, right?
yeah, yeah,
But what if
yeah,
the other two guys are able to find a person quickly? Like,
yeah,
and then this guy loses out on almost all the brokerage that he would have made, right? So that's why
yeah,
what we promise brokers, at least the way we've started it off, is that we promise brokers velocity, where we tell them that, see, if you keep this property with you for 10 days, there is a very high probability that some other broker in the market will rent it out in 5 days, right?
yeah,
So rather than asking me for a full 1 month brokerage, why don't you work with me on a longer term basis? I'm going to pay you an X amount, but I'm going to take one house from you every 5 days. So you will essentially be doing 6 deals a month, and you will make the same amount of money that you were making before, because you were doing one deal a month before, right? So
uh-huh, yeah, okay,
I think that's an answer that we've figured out, at least from a short term perspective. But I think if we align the incentives for brokers to work with us and also help them make money from this entire standardization aspect, I think we're going to be like a very scalable company that way.
No, I actually love this new mentality that has come into, at least as the millennials and the Gen Zs are now becoming, founders and starting to run companies, and they're becoming CEOs. The concept is not, we have healthy competition amongst companies. There's nothing like that. It still exists, but it's healthy. And at the same time, we all believe in a symbiotic sort of relationship where we believe, okay, we want to grow, but you grow along with us. We don't want to cut you out. We don't want to take your work. We'll give you an advantage also, and we'll also make money. Let's all make money together. So I really love that certain concept that is coming up, and I'm so glad to see even you all do that. And
See,
as
historically, I mean, real estate, I mean, people have always looked at real estate as a very low trust market. I mean, even if I go and approach a lot of landlords these days, they first think that I'm a broker. And once they're like, okay, this guy is a broker, then the hesitation to talk is a lot. Right. And
yeah,
I'm like very frustrated with the way the industry works, because brokers, or I mean all of the elements in the market, they've somehow killed the trust that a normal person has on some other stakeholder in the same industry, right? I mean, it's there in
yeah,
pharma, it's there in tech, it's there in software, but in real estate, people don't trust each other for some reason, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And one thing that I keep telling people all the time is that it's not a zero sum game. Real estate is legit the biggest market in India, and there could be like 10 companies making 1,000 crores each just in the rental market. So why do you have to behave as if you know why do you have to kind of make it a zero sum game? You and I both can win in this equation,
yeah.
and I think brokers have also really started to understand it. Hopefully, I mean, fortunately.
I think they will. I mean, if you go and tell someone, oh, you're gonna cut one deal a month, if I come into the picture, you're cutting 6 deals a month, obviously you're going to make that person happy. They're making 6 times the amount they're going to make a month, so absolutely they're going to be like gung ho. I'm going. So that's absolutely actually great. Also, I think just a little bit from my understanding at this point. So I you just spoke about no broker, and okay, if you think about it, the entire broker thing issue in India is as it is. They brought in no broker, right? And I whatever problem it seemed to be solving, I do realize that people still like to approach people personally where renting a house is concerned. Take my society for example. We have 180 flats, and a lot of flats in my society, it's a good society in Mumbai, go on rent. And most of the people come and put the rent up on the society WhatsApp group that, oh, my flat is going on rent. If you know someone, please, approach me, and this is my number. And if somebody wants a flat on rent, they'll message again on the WhatsApp group. So I mean, if they were solving a problem, I don't think they sort of broke that entire process, and they entered it where people just go to no broker and they list their company up there. They're still approaching people personally. It's still someone you want to see, so that is something I think maybe did not happen.
And see, there's a reason why. I mean, that's not happening because, again, real estate is a low trust market. You will rather go and rent your home through a reference, through someone you know. I mean, and that's why brokers are still present, because, whenever I go and speak to these bigger landlords in Bangalore who own 40, 50 apartments, they typically work with a broker who's responsible for renting out those 40, 50 apartments for this particular person.
Okay.
And this guy will, like, it's very difficult to convince this guy to move from using a broker to start using Flent, because you have to cross that trust gap. And
Yeah.
that's been like our biggest insight on the supply side, where, see, on the supply side, we're trying to create India's most trustworthy property management brand, where
Okay.
I have to make the other person feel that I am very different as compared to your typical property management company or your typical broker, because I have all the skin in the game. How do I have all the skin in the game? So we give rental guarantees to landlord. It's like, I think it's one of the very unique models that we've created, where the landlord gets the rent no matter what. Once we evaluate the property, and once the property kind of falls under our criteria, we
Yeah.
send them a deposit on the same day. If they're asking for a 3 month of rent as a deposit, 2 months of rent as a deposit, we send that deposit to their account on the same day, and we start paying them the rent after 15 to 20 days. And even if the property is vacant after that, it's totally on us. I mean, that falls on our balance sheet, right? So we clearly go out there and tell the landlord that, see, I have all the skin in the game here. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not like your broker who's just gonna run away by getting his commission, and I'm not charging any commission, by the way. So that's one. And the second is that I go and tell him that, see, I'm gonna invest money from my own pocket to furnish your property. I mean, I really want your property to look 10x better so that it attracts 10x better tenants. And eventually, if it attracts 10x better tenants, it's good for you, it's good for me, it's good for the maintenance of the property, right? So I mean, I think, and that is why, I mean, as a very small company in the real estate space, we've been able to grow really fast because our value prop on the supply side really makes a lot of sense for NRIs. I told you about this new age landlord, right? Who's also, optimizing for convenience and flexibility. So when they hear about the model, they clearly find it a lot more beneficial as compared to working with a typical broker, working with a typical no broker, or working with a property management company. So solving that gap is super important. And I mean, this could be like a very crazy idea. I mean, if I get Amitabh Bachchan to be the brand ambassador of Flent on the supply side, that's all I have. I mean, that is when every landlord would start trusting me and be like, "हाँ, property देनी है तो Flent को ही देनी है." Because I'm saying that I want to be the default renting choice for top 1% landlords and tenants. I have to kind of build that pipeline, right? I mean, even landlords are like, प्रॉपर्टी रेंट करनी है तो फ्लेंट को देनी है, और टेनेंट बोलेगा कि अगर प्रॉपर्टी रेंट करनी है तो फ्लेंट से ही लेनी है.
That's a pretty interesting concept that, okay, if I get Amitabh Bachchan, because Amitabh Bachchan bolega, so the entire country is going to believe, yes,
Yes.
Big B ne bola, so yes, it's happening. Also, you know what? Your flats are really well done. Like the aesthetics in your flats are amazing. I was going through your website, and the detailing on the website is another matter by itself, because all of the amenities that you've mentioned. You've mentioned that for I think 2,500 extra bucks you can get yourself a help, and all of those things are really amazing. But what really stands out amongst the entire model is the fact that your flats are very pleasing to look at. If tomorrow I need to book something in Bangalore and I just see, oh wow, this flat it looks amazing, I'm going for it, because I mean then I will be able to entertain people within the flats themselves, right? So I would like to know who's behind that and what's going on over there.
Got it. So my co-founder Mayank is behind this entire thing. I mean, of course, I can share a little bit more about him and what makes him just the right person to be building this out. But see, I mean, it all started off with that small itch in our minds that when we go out and look for a home in Bangalore, why am I not able to find a home that matches my vibe, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, there are so many people like me in this city who would be looking for a home that matches their vibe. And whatever supply you have in the market, I mean, 90% of the 90% of that supply, first of all, is unfurnished. It's no
Mhm.
furniture, old homes, not that standardized in some ways. The wall paint would be violet in color, it would be pink in color, right? So I mean, I think it's that mismatch that clearly exists in the market, where existing inventory is not suited for your upcoming demand and the kind of youngsters, the kind of people who are moving into urban cities. So that is where it all started. And fortunately, Mayank and I, we kind of loved home decor. We love designing homes, and I mean that's why we started that Airbnb thing as well. So I mean, we keep it very simple, honestly. I mean, we whenever we set up a home, we kind of
Yeah.
think of it as our own home, where you're like, okay, will I enjoy the vibe of this home when it's completely designed? I mean, do the textures, do the lights, do the sofas, do the appliances, does everything here make me feel good about where I'm living? And it's a simple yes or no question. And then I think we've just kept executing on that formula. We've hired some very interesting young people, again, people who fall under our age bracket, who have a you have they have a good taste for aesthetics, they have a good taste for furniture. And I think it's just that DNA that we are building as a company, that whatever you design has to be aesthetic. I mean, be it our website, be it our homes, or be it something else. With respect to how we are doing it and who's behind all of it, as I said, right, I mean, Mayank's done like a tremendous job, taking us from two homes to almost like where we are today. Uh, what we are doing internally is, you can think of it as us trying to build an in-house IKEA plus live space in some ways,
Okay. Okay.
where I want to be launching 50,000 homes in the next few years. I mean, my target is to actually launch 50,000 homes in the top 5 cities of India. And if I have to make that happen, and if I have to keep the same quality of furnishings and everything else, I need to kind of build solid processes that help me kind of pull it off. So from day one, we've had, we've been scouting for good painters, electricians, carpenters, people who understand wall art, people who understand the, wallpapers, textures, everything. I mean, just that entire live space aspect where I'm able to kind of design a very good bookshelf in a day. I'm
Yeah.
able to refurbish an old bed into a very good looking bed in like a few hours. So that entire thing we've kind of we started very early, and that's why I think we're now in a situation where we can keep doing this over and over again. And the second aspect is building an in-house IKEA, where every piece of furniture, decor, art, everything that we procure and source is super tasteful. So the way I kind of explain it to the team is that, anyone who moves into a Flint home, everything that they see in the home, they should feel that they can either not afford this item, or they don't even know where to get it from, because that is when the perceived value of the product is very, very high. Of course.
Aspirational.
Yes, yes, and I mean that can't be done on day one. But we've
Yeah.
been very, very, very specific about the kind of vendors we source from, very specific about the kind of things we buy and put in our warehouse, because every piece of uh, furniture or decor that we add into a property is eventually helping us create that perception that everything is aspirational, right? We eventually want to have our own manufacturing capability, we want to have our own design capabilities, and we want to kind of manufacture, ship, and store everything that we kind of put in our homes. That's the ambition. Where and that's why I kind of like to call it an in-house IKEA, where we'll have our own designs, we'll have our own manufacturing, we'll have our own logistics and warehouse. Uh, Fortunately, in the last 1 year, see, I mean, when we started, we were launching one home in around 12, 13 days. So it took
Okay.
us 12 days to completely transform the property. So we used to acquire like a totally naked property, no furniture, nothing, and then kind of used to transform it end to end. Now that number has come down to 3 days. So right
Oh,
after we
okay.
get the key from the landlord, we're able to deck up the property in just 3 days. And trust me, we worked with a lot of interior designers. A lot of interior designers express interest in working with us, and
Yeah.
whenever they try to understand what we do, like mind boggled, because they're like, how can you do this in 3 days, right? So apart from creating good homes, uh, for us to scale, it's also about how fast can we launch a home. Because as a company, I can't keep launching two homes a month, right? I mean, I've gone from launching two homes a month to almost 10, 15 homes a month now. By by end of 2025, our target is to launch one home every day. And if I have to make it happen, there are like so many optimizations, so many processes, so many warehousing capabilities, so much procurement that we need to do to kind of pull it off. Because setting up homes as a hobby is one thing, but setting up 1,000 homes in a year is like a different ball game altogether, honestly. And I think Mayank can do like a separate podcast on it.
No, absolutely. But you know what? When you said we set up the home in 12 days, I was like, wow, because even that is commendable. I mean, doable, but commendable. Then you're like 3 days. I'm like, what? And yeah, okay, that's absolutely incredible. But I think you all have completely optimized the process to another level. So
Yep.
I mean, but y'all are techies, right? Y'all really know how to think out of the box. So that's actually pretty incredible. And you all mentioned you all work with interior designers and all as well now. So talk a little bit about that as well, because up till now you all have been doing it on your own. So now I'm assuming they're approaching you to work with you. So obviously you're doing
Yeah.
something right. Tell us about that.
So I mean, this came as a surprise, honestly. After we announced our fundraise, a lot of people naturally reached out because they wanted to flint a home, but a lot of them also reached out because they were like, "Oh, what you're doing is amazing. I love designing homes on the weekend. My day job is that I am a product manager at Flipkart. I do marketing at this company, but I would love to do this on a weekend." And most of these were, folks who were like us. They were working in the tech industry. Probably they had an Instagram page where they used to upload things here and there. And a lot of such people reached out, and we were like, okay, this is a great way for us to build a community and totally kind of outsource maybe 50% of the homes that we launch. Because see, as a company, we have this one rule where we want all our homes to be consistently variable. I mean,
Okay.
it it has to be consistent in some ways, because if it's not consistent, then we'll not be able to scale. But it
Yeah.
has to be variable. So that's why it's like consistently variable. And that consistently variable feeling really kind of flows in when you have different people designing different homes for you. Because every designer has their own aesthetic sense, everyone has their own taste. And we thought, this is a great way for us to launch more homes a month and launch a lot of, different homes per se. And yeah, I think now that a lot of people have reached out, we've started doing these houses with them, where we've now moved on from decking up the entire house ourselves to creating a platform of sorts that enables an interior designer to, or like, sorry, I mean, I should call them interior designers, I should call them wannabe interior designers, good aesthetic
Okay.
people, whatever.
Sure.
uh,
Yeah.
so the platform basically just enables them to access our inventory. It enables them
Okay.
to access our resources, so they can call an electrician, they can call a plumber, they can call a painter, they can call our wall paneling experts. They have access to all our resources, and they have access to a lot of mood boards that we've created from a layouting perspective. Because we've
Okay.
designed so many houses, the
Mm-hmm.
moment I look at a house, I'm like, okay, this layout will really go with this mood board, right? So we have like a bunch of templates there as well. So this designer can just pick up a mood board, do some improvisations on top of it, use all the resources that we have with respect to electricians, plumbers, getting stuff from an inventory, using our logistics guys, and actually set up a home in 3 days, right? So I mean, the next one
Yeah.
2 years for us is going to be all about scaling this entire platform play, where am I can I really do 80% of my homes just by this? Because these people want to work with me on weekends, and I'm going to pay them on a gig basis, where you did this home for me, I'm going to pay you X, I'm going to pay you Y.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that has come out to be a very interesting growth lever, which will scale. I never thought there would be so many people who would be interested in designing homes with us.
Yeah, I think my mom is going to be interested in this. The more you talk about it, the more
Yes,
I think she's going to be interested in this. But now I'm realizing that this entire time when people would design homes, it's generally on their own, like, aesthetic sense. And okay, there was Pinterest, so people would just go on and like look into that. But now that I'm realizing, y'all are actually streamlining the entire process by actually very smartly using technology, and then balancing it out with the human aspect, the aesthetics, and all of those things. So that's incredible. So let's just then now actually talk about how you have leveraged technology to streamline the rental process, and what role does automation play in reducing the time and hassle for the tenants and the homeowners.
got it. See, I mean, I'll start talking about tech and then probably talk about automation as well. Uh, there's demand, there's supply, and there's that entire experience layer, right? Uh,
Yeah.
our core business model is heavily dependent on technology, to be honest. I've
Okay.
told you the value prop we've created for landlords, where I promise them an X amount of occupancy and I promise them a Y amount of rent every month.
Yeah.
Now, technically, all I need to do is I need to rent out the property at 20, 30, 40% margin on top of the rent that I'm paying to the landlord.
Yeah.
And I need to keep maintaining occupancy levels to a level that's either equal to or higher than the amount, like higher than the occupancy that I promised to the landlord, right? So it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I've been able to launch 100, 150 units in Bangalore just on back of some data, just on top of some intuition, my understanding of where demand can really flourish, where demand can really supply can really flourish, and all of that.
Yeah.
But at
Yeah.
scale, all of this is going to be powered by a model. We call it the REN DNA. So think of REN DNA as a pin code level sales assistance tool that
Okay.
helps you understand the kind of demand and supply you can see in that pin code. So,
Okay.
say 2 years down the line, I'm trying to acquire a property in Greenland layout in a particular pin code in a particular society. Rain DNA should be able to tell me that, okay, based on my previous data analysis and whatever quant understanding I've built, you should not acquire a property here in October at this much rent. Because October occupancies are slightly low, demand is slightly low. You should probably acquire this property in the month of April, or you should probably acquire
Okay.
this property in the month of February. So rent
Okay.
DNA basically helps me. close that occupancy gap as much as possible, because the most important metric for this business is occupancy percentage. If I'm promising all my landlords a 90% occupancy and I'm not able to operate at a 95% occupancy, or rather I'm operating at a 75% occupancy, then I'm technically losing money. And that doesn't make sense for a business, right? So the way we think of it is that at scale, Rent DNA will power most of our pricing decisions. Rent DNA will power most of our acquisition decisions. And Rent DNA will become the core unit for us to make it a totally self-serve product. When I say
Okay.
self-serve, think of it as a platform where a landlord who's sitting in the United States discovers Flint, comes on the platform, uh, shares a little more detail about their property. So, okay, my property is located in this particular neighborhood. This is the pin code. These are some photos, and this is the name of the society. I should
Okay.
be able to tell them on a real-time basis the kind of rental yield I can promise them and the kind of occupancy levels I can promise them, so that if they're okay with this model where okay, I'm going to be getting 90% occupancy, I'm going to be getting 60,000 rupees of rent month over month. I
Yeah.
click on next, I add my bank details, and your deposit is sent to you right away, right? I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
that is the kind of platform we want to build. And Rent DNA will power all of these decisions for us, because if I am acquiring a property for 60K, I know that there's a potential to rent that property out for 85K after I do my magic with experience and with the product that we
Yeah.
have, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me to be aware of whether the property can be rented out for 85K, I need to be capturing a lot of demand signals. And of course, I need to be capturing a lot of supply signals as well. So I think that's one super important lever that we are building from a tech perspective at this moment. The second tech advantage, is just think of the flow again. I mean, once a landlord comes onto the platform, they sign up, they actually add their bank details, they get the deposit right away. Instead of furnishing the property end to end, I can use an AI that digitally furnishes the property just by using the pictures, and it directly gets listed on my website as a very real property. I mean, I'm talking about from a quality perspective. I'm talking about that quality where you're not able to identify the difference between the fact that okay, this is a digitally staged property and this is a
Yeah.
physically staged property. So that
Yeah.
digitally staged property gets listed on the website, and I only go out and furnish the property once the property gets booked. So that kind of also saves a lot of ops from my side, where I don't furnish the property that don't get rented out, right? So
Yeah.
that is, that's like one of the other line items that we are very very excited about. From a demand perspective, tech is going to play a lot of role for us to qualify demand. I mean, and one of the things that we've already launched from a tech perspective is this program called Reserve. So
Okay.
Reserve is like, we want to make Reserve the default way to use Flint,
Okay.
because last 1 year we realized that we've been operating on an inventory based model where we launch a property and then we go and find tenants for it.
Yeah.
And our properties are so good that all of them get rented out in 10 days. So whenever we get a huge website spike or like traffic spike where we have a lot of people coming onto the website, they're not able to find anything because everything is booked. So
Yeah.
we launched Reserve, which is basically a very digital way of you to rent a property, just like you go to a broker now. So if you go to a broker
Yeah.
now, you tell them that okay, I'm looking for a property in this location. These are my preferences. This is my vibe and all of that. So Reserve is
Yeah.
very simple. You go to the platform, you tell us your requirements, you tell us where you're looking for a property, what's your vibe like, uh, are you a non-vegetarian, whatever. I mean, we capture a bunch of details, and uh, based on that we tell you that okay, I can get you a property for this much rent in this particular locality, and I can get this to you based on the slots that are available. So we release x amount of slots every month, where
Okay.
in November I launched 30 slots where 30 people can pre-book a property. In some ways, I should say pre-book a slot. So once you have a slot with Reserve, I am going to be prioritizing you for that slot. So my sales team and my supply team will go out there in the market and aggressively look for a home just for you based on the requirements that you mentioned. And we're going to then furnish the home, deck it up the way we do, make it 10x better, and then give it to you on the date you want to move in. So that's what Reserve is. Of course, we've launched like a very basic V1 of it, but the idea is to make it like a very self-serve kind of a model where demand always keeps coming onto my platform. I'm able to qualify demand by understanding their requirements, and I'm able to then kind of take a payment from them as a pre-booking of sorts, where they pay and then I start aggressively looking for a home for them. This will always also, I mean, tech will play a huge role here, because I need to qualify and disqualify demand based on what I have on my supply side. So based on, let's say, if I'm speaking to 200 landlords at the moment, and let's say Alavia is coming on the reserve workflow, and she's telling me that, okay, I'm looking for a house in Worli, and I want to move into this home, which is a 3 BHK. It should be on the 10th floor, and I want to move in the next 2 weeks. So based on
Yeah.
whatever I have on the supply side, I should either be able to tell you the cost of the requirements that you have, or I should be able to tell you that, okay, I am not going to be able to get you a home in the next 2 weeks, but probably if you wait for 4 more weeks, I can get you a home in Worli. Or maybe you can just, look for a home in Bandra for now, because I can get you a home in Bandra for 2 weeks, in the next 2 weeks. So tech will play a huge role here, because in some ways it's like a lot of data talking to each other and helping the user get to the right choice without any human being involved.
That's actually very interesting. It's a very new concept because as of right now, it's working in the opposite direction, right? It's all about personal outreach, and it's brokers who are actually meeting people and doing that. So it's an incredible idea. I mean, I would really like to see how this goes, and it does sound very interesting. Actually, we've heard of fast fashion, and now we are hearing about fast rentals, which is actually incredible. So y'all are actually, I don't know, flipping over the market. You're not like flipping homes, you're flipping the market, so
Yes.
absolutely incredible. But let's talk precisely. So I know in certain ways we have constantly been comparing the traditional Indian market to, what Flent is doing. But let's talk about it specifically, right? Like, let's talk precisely about this. Like, tell me how y'all have actually contrasted the entire contrast against the entire traditional Indian rental market.
I think, uh, so I think, see, the answer is going to be very similar, by the way. I mean, we can either cut it off also. But see, traditional renting requires you to deal with a broker. Traditional renting requires you to deal with a landlord. Traditional renting requires you to negotiate the rent and the deposit with the landlord, find a flatmate using these community apps, get furniture either from like a rental company or buy it yourself. And then when you move out, you have to deal with that entire process all over again, where you have to tell your rental company that, okay, I don't need this furniture anymore. You have to tell your flatmates that I'm leaving. You have to kind of come up with that split of move out charges that you have to pay to your flatmates. You have to pay a move out charge to the landlord. You have to haggle with the landlord to get your deposit back. I mean, there have been cases where people have moved out and they haven't received their deposit back for like 6 months, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, as I said, right, even traditional renting is a 10-step process, and it's high time that we are able to, use a product that stops focusing on the what and starts, sorry, my bad. It's high time that you kind of have a product in the market that stops focusing on the how, and starts focusing on the what. And a very good example of this is Swiggy in some ways. I mean, pre-Swiggy, when you used to order food, it used to be a 10-step process. You first figure out that pamphlet where you kind of have a look at the menu. Then you figure out, okay, I'm going to call this restaurant now. So you wait in the line, you call that restaurant, you place that order. There's a lot of back and forth. You over the first step, then you wait for the order to arrive. You don't know when it's going to arrive. You don't even know whether the restaurant has accepted your order. You keep following up. You keep following up. Maybe 50
Yeah.
minutes down the line, you'll get a call saying that, okay, delivery partner has left. Now the delivery partner will call you twice just to check your location, because like, अच्छा ये घर नहीं मिल रहा है मुझे, कहाँ है आपका घर exactly, right? And then the delivery partner arrives. Then you're able to kind of pay the guy, not via UPI, maybe not via card. You have to pay via cash. So ordering food was also a 10-step process before Swiggy came, and Swiggy made it so effortless. Then people stopped focusing on the how of, ordering food. They were like, अच्छा खाना order करना है ना, okay, खाना order करना है. So
Yeah.
what did, I mean, if you think about it, they just standardized the entire process, and the core quality of the product that was getting delivered went 10x. So in our
Yeah.
case also, the core quality of the product, which is the rental home, is now 10x, because all the homes that I launch are 10x better than a normal rental home. And the process that you go through to rent a home is now like a one-step process and not a 10-step process. I think that's the precise difference between how traditional renting works and what Flint is. Of course, we're doing it at a small scale now. The ambition is to kind of do it at a very large scale, but we want to be like the Swiggies and the Ubers of the rental world in some ways.
You will be eventually. I mean, at what as of what I see right now and how fast y'all aim for our generation, right? So I'm a very, I'm a huge consumer. So when I see something and I like it, I'm just gonna go for it. So if I were to look for a rental, I would definitely go for this, because I mean it saves you so many things at so many levels, including mental peace. So absolutely, I think y'all are pretty bang on and y'all are going in a great direction. But let us now talk about the elephant in the room, the funding that y'all have just raised a few
Yeah,
months ago, and I'm
yeah.
sure you all have grand plans for that funding. I will let you divulge more into that. So please tell us about it.
See, honestly, it's a like it's a first round of funding, and for us, we kind of look at it as a category creation play in some ways, where we're launching this new category where people are paying a premium for a good home. The way renting works is totally getting flipped into what we call as renting. And I think in these kind of journeys, you spend a lot of time just nailing that consumer experience. You spend a lot of time figuring out the right mix of offerings that you have to give to your customer, scale that out, and at the same time make money for yourself. So I think the next couple of years for us are honestly about just validating that concept more and more, because the category is there. We believe in it. That's why we started, and we really want to be in a position where we understand it 100x better than everyone else after 2 years, when the category will become crowded. Right now, I mean, people used to think of it as a very boring business before. Yeah, why would you set up homes? Why would you furnish homes? Is that even a business? So we
Yeah,
converted a very boring business into a very interesting idea. We launched it, we scaled it. The idea for us from a funding perspective is just to use this money to set up operations, scale them, figuring out ways to actually make this a scalable outcome in some ways. And see, that is also a multi-step process where, as of now, the biggest problem that I'm trying to solve is that how do I launch 15-20 homes a month very consistently? Because if I've gone from, let's say, 2 homes a month to 5 homes a month and 10 homes a month, I have to keep scaling that number. And as I scale, I realize the kind of challenges I could face. You know, going from 10 to 20 is a different problem. Going from 20 to 50 is a different problem, right? So the focus is going to be,
exponential. Your growth
yeah,
keeps becoming exponential. Yeah,
yeah, and see, and the other challenge here, the reason why I said customer experience is very important is because if you do exponential growth, you have to somehow ensure that the experience is still the same or even better in some ways, right? And we're not like
absolutely.
a cloud server company where I set up 4 cloud servers and 4 homes are launched, right? So
Yeah,
launching every home is something that comes from like a designer's heart and soul. It's a
yes,
creation at the end of the day, right? So
yeah,
how do you ensure that we're able to do more of such creations every month by ensuring that the quality and the experience remains same? So I think that that's like the first problem statement that we're going to be working on in the next 1 or 2 years. And the second one is the entire tech aspect. And I think Rishabh, my co-founder, has been at the forefront of it. We've been thinking of tech from day zero because we clearly know that tech is going to play a super important role if we actually want to launch 50,000 homes.
okay,
I mean, at the outset, it looks very simple that, why don't you just keep launching homes year over year, and then, you should be able to get to 50,000 homes.
yeah,
But things really break if you're not using tech. Things really break if you're I mean, things don't even scale if you're not using tech in our case as well. So I think leveraging tech is one of the core priorities as well, and we're doing it in some very small ways to begin with. I mean, the reserve program that I spoke to you about, right? So the objective for the next 1 year for us is to find a very solid product market fit for this reserve program, because in some ways
okay,
it's a very new program, right? I mean, you never reserve a slot to book a home. The concept in itself is a little new and marquee for people to understand and start using in some ways. And we also have to kind of leverage a lot of tech to ensure that if 100 people are coming on the platform and paying for reserve, we're able to get a home for 90 of them. We don't want to be a company that you know uh, that basically gets 100 people or 150 people to pay for a slot, and then you're able to get a home only for 20 or 30 of them. And
yeah,
tech, I think, is going to solve a lot of that problem for us, where we're able to disqualify certain kinds of demands. We're able to qualify certain kinds of demands, and same goes on the supply side. I mean, I have a lot of landlords approaching me, but how do I use tech to qualify and disqualify the kind of people or the kind of landlords or the kind of properties I want to onboard onto my platform?
That's actually that's very interesting because it helps you focus on the things that you need to focus on, and it can help you solve more like arithmetic or information oriented issues, which actually it has been doing in a lot of industries. So I can see how y'all are working towards that. uh,
Sorry,
Now,
I'll just
please,
add a
please.
yeah, sorry. The Ren DNA that I spoke about, right? I mean, Ren DNA for the next 1 year is all about collecting as much data as possible. Because if I'm not able to capture demand and supply signals, I will not be able to build a model on top of it, right? So, I mean, we've like, of course, internally we've launched a bunch of tools. Externally, we're launching a bunch of tools to just capture as much data possible from a demand and supply perspective, so that once we actually start deploying a lot of models and AI on top of this data, we're able to extract insights. And Ren DNA is becoming like an assistance tool for us to kind of price our properties, acquire properties, and so on and so forth.
Okay. My next question is, where do you see the Indian rental industry in the next 5 years, and where do you see Flent within that entire scope?
Uh, See, renting as a market, I think if you, I mean, just because of the explosion of social media and a lot of content floating around, I think all of us have started believing that renting is better than buying in some ways. So the appeal for renting as a product is now higher than the appeal for buying as a product in some ways, right? So more and more people are going to rent. More and more people are going to rent good properties. On the supply side, there's going to be another investment class where people will now probably start investing in properties just because they know that the rental yield in India has also caught up. India rental yields are 2 to 3% in like 2 to 4% in a good case scenario in like the top metro cities of India. But United States rental yields are like 8 odd percent, 9 odd percent in some cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think if renting is going to get so much demand, then the rental yields are also going to rise. And it's
Yeah,
like a
obviously.
flywheel effect in some ways, where a lot of people will buy properties because now they feel that, okay, from a long-term capital gains perspective, buying a property is great. From a
Yeah,
renting perspective also, it's great because I can actually cover my EMI from the rent and that I am receiving, right? So a lot of landlords we speak to, they tell us that, okay, the only reason why I love working with you guys is because you give me that rent on time every month, and I'm able to cover my EMIs with that rent. So I think that trend is only going to accelerate with renting being in trend. Uh, and that entire standardization aspect that I spoke to you about, right? I mean, where everyone has their own standard these days. See, the reason why from like a real estate perspective also, there's a Godrej, there's a
yeah,
Brigade,
yeah.
DNR. All of these builders have their own standards. There's total environment in Bangalore, right? Super aspirational in some ways, but renting
Mhm.
does not have standard in like in any way
No, it
whatsoever.
doesn't. Absolutely not.
And I think there are going to be multiple standards of renting. Honestly, I mean, Flint is just building for like the top 1 to 5%, but there are going to be like there could be something super luxury. There could be something super, affordable. We are slightly on that premium to super premium kind of a range. So I think that is one shift that I definitely see happening, where people would shell a lot more of their salary to live in a rental home, because rents are going to go high. Buying a property is going to be a lot more expensive as well in that case. So then a lot of people will start renting. Even like we kind of, Rishabh and I, we kind of talk about it that, can we actually see, I mean, in the next 5 10 years, can we actually create something where we like families can also rent now, instead of, you would see a lot
Mhm.
of people getting married and buying a home, right? Buying a home would, of course, buying a home today is a better option as compared to renting a home for multitude of reasons for families. But can flenting a home become like a choice, a far better choice as compared to buying a home in the next few years? Is something that we keep thinking of. So I think these are the kind of changes I see purely on the residential renting side. Of course, I mean, there's the commercial aspect. There's a lot of other things that could happen. Uh, but I think Flint is gonna be on top of all of these trends because we've been an early believer, we've been an early mover in the space. One interesting trend that I mean might excite a lot of people is this entire fractional investing
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
where the regulator is now allowing more and more SM REITs to be formed. They are reducing the amount of money that you have to deploy in order to participate in an SM REIT. So right now, I think it's still on the gray area when it comes to residential side, but fractional investing for apartments could be a thing. I mean, we
Yeah.
keep talking about this as well, where what if we 5 or 10 years down the line we have landlords who are not landlords, but they want to own a piece of an apartment. So 100 landlords come together and we kind of enable them to buy a property in such a manner that our curation and selection with respect to properties is so good that they get like the highest amount of rental yield on top of that property. So 100 people coming together putting in 5 lakhs each, we buy a 5 crore property for them and we manage it end to end. So we get them the rental yield, we do all the paperwork. So I think that in itself could be like a good supply lever for us, where we can then decide that okay, we need more apartments in this building, so why not get 100 people to buy an apartment through Flint, and we'll promise them a rental yield. So I think fractional real estate could be something that could really become the trend in the next few years. I'm not sure.
No, I think it's a really interesting concept. So even PropTech Buzz has a category called fractional real estate, and where we do all of these listings and things like that. So yes, it's definitely an up and coming thing, and it's quite interesting as well. But a good indicator of what people are doing on the rental front is so the name escapes me, but the Taj group of hotels started a fancy apartment complex somewhere in deep into Sobo, I think maybe Cuff Parade or those areas. And basically during COVID, families were coming and living over there, and they have like a butler service, and they
Yeah,
have all of these fancy services. So yes, when a big company is starts getting interested in a smaller market, so they open their own little bit of a vertical into it, is a good indicator towards you actually doing something right. And the fact that Flint actually focuses on just this one, people who don't have target markets don't generally have a business. You all have an exact target market, doesn't matter the size, you have an exact target market, and that is exactly what a successful business has. This is a bit of a niche, but I would be very interested to see how far you all grow, because not only do you all seem like very bright young men, but I see that you all have a very good grasp on what the humans like and what the current trends are. So y'all are doing a fabulous job, and
thank
I
you so
would
much.
like to I would love to say live in a Flint property one day if y'all come to Mumbai. And I do have one last question. Do you want to hire my mom
Absolutely. I
as an
mean,
interior designer, please?
a lot of
She'll love
moms have
it.
started watching us, so would love to
Yeah.
have her on board.
Yeah, but my mom is special, okay? She's good at interior design. I'm just joking. But yes, I would love to see you all come to Mumbai sometime. I would love to, tell my friends, oh, you want to stay in a property. I know someone, and they have a lovely property called, they have a company called Flent. Please go and stay there, and it will be incredible. I see you all going far, and I see you all doing good, and Godspeed to you all in all your endeavors, because I think you all are doing it for all the right reasons, and it's going to be very good for our country to have some standardization in that way. And I'm so happy that you spend some time talking to us, and you have a lot of interesting things to talk about. And thank you so much for joining us today. I hope when I talk to you in the future, I talk to a very successful and big businessman who will have very little time to give me. So thank you so much.
But I
And
think
for our
success
audience,
in your head. I think. I mean,
no,
it's
I
a way.
think y'all are going to do well. I really think y'all are going to do well, because y'all are doing it with all the right intentions, and intentions are everything. So I think y'all are going to do well. And if y'all
Fingers
hire my
crossed.
mom, y'all will have her blessings. So that will also help y'all do well, because in
For sure.
India, our mother's blessings go a very long way. It's very important to us. And for our audiences at PropTech Bus, thank you for joining us today. This is Shell Daswani, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.